Welcome back to Good Night. Our next guest is AJ Nichols, who I got to know through the podcast on Barstool Sports known as The Kirk Minahan Show. Mr. Minahan and I were in Sherborne recently holding a vigil, and we got to talking about ways to help the transgender community. And AJ went on Kirk's podcast just last week and talked about it. And we were so excited about it, we wanted to continue the conversation. So AJ, thanks for coming and joining us here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's an honor to have you here. So let's talk a little bit about your story and how you got to be where you are. You originally grew up in Bangor, Maine, right?
Yes.
And you're a student at Northeastern.
Yes.
Okay. And you're a transgender.
I am. I'm a transgender woman.
Let's talk a little bit about that. Talk about your story and, how you got to be where you are today.
Of course. So originally, I didn't know when I was growing up. I know a lot of people think that people have to know when they're like 2 or 3 and be really like, this is me, like in full, like wearing your mom's dresses, clothes, everything. But I had a very masculine childhood. I had a twin brother, so I didn't have a lot of resources, and I played sports. I was always hanging out with the other guys, so I had a very masculine childhood, but the only thing that I knew off the bat was different about me was that I liked guys, so. And
how early in your life did you realize that?
I must have been 6 or 7. I remember some of my earliest memories are, like having crushes on like TV characters or like, yeah. So, and then when I started growing up through middle school, I kind of watched how men were supposed to act in the world, and I thought, oh, I'm supposed to, have girlfriends, and like if I want to be friends with a girl, it means that I need to ask them out, and like, you know what I mean? But I never actually was like interested in them. I just really wanted to get to know them and be friends with them. So, I think all the girls would kind of figure out after a while that I wasn't like super interested. Mm-hmm. Hopefully they didn't take it personally, because obviously I was working through a lot. But by the time I got to my freshman year of high school, like all those feelings had kind of bubbled up to the surface, and I was like, I'm gay.
Okay. So let's kind of set the table here, because I'm closer to 60 than I am 50.
Okay.
I have kids your age. And I'll say it, back in my day, nobody I knew was as courageous as you, okay? Because I don't think people could be as brave and as candid as you. So I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
And it's got to be difficult, but it's also got to be rewarding for you as well. And I grew up in the Midwest, very conservative type guy. Some people say I'm a stunt double for Vice President Pence, which probably Vice President Pence has some issues with it, or probably have some issues with this conversation, but that's his issue to deal with. Like I said, when I was a kid, nobody talked about this subject. But the one thing that really grabbed me from your interview with Kirk, you're a person. And that really stood out to me, and I was really impressed by you, the way you've handled the situation. So understand that I'm a very naive man when it comes to this conversation. Okay. So you were born identified as a male, right?
Yeah.
Is that the proper way of saying it?
Yes.
Please
assigned male at birth.
Assigned male at birth.
Yeah, so like the doctor pulled me out and was like, yep.
Okay.
Throat blue and
you said you had a twin brother?
I did, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they wrote down on the birth certificate,
yeah.
Boy. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And you knew early on that you probably were gay, or at least were not interested in the opposite sex, right?
I knew I was at least interested in guys.
Okay.
When I was really young, I didn't do a lot of self-reflection, so I wasn't really concerned with my identity growing up. So my identity was whatever I was interested in. Like when I was really little, I would be like really interested in like growing plants and like teaching my friends about them, or like rocks and like, you know what I mean? So like that, I became like, I was also like accelerated in classes. So I became like the smart kid.
Okay, that's not a bad thing.
That was my identity, and I kind of carried through just like the identity of whatever I was interested in or whatever people saw me as. I wasn't actually looking at the mirror really hard.
Now, I heard you tell Kirk that, you know, your parents kind of knew. It wasn't a surprise to them when you told them that you thought you were gay.
Yeah.
So how did your parents react to that?
To being gay or
Yes.
being trans?
No, because we'll get to
gay?
that. Yeah, to being gay. You said they kind of knew.
Yeah, it wasn't a surprise to them. I think they had seen me, you know, I think maybe they claim that I've had conversations with them when I was really little, talking about liking guys. I know they probably saw me looking at guys when I was growing up. You know, I was always really interested, you know, just really engrossed with men. So they weren't surprised, and it was honestly very comforting to knowing that I had their support right off the bat, because even coming out as gay is scary. You know,
oh sure,
lots of gay people. I mean, less now in recent times, which is very good. But you know, 10 years ago, people were getting kicked out left and right.
And when did you, like, what age or like grade did you, you know, finally say, okay, yep, this is what it is, I am gay?
Right before my freshman year of high school.
Right before, so.
15, when I turned 15.
I mean, it's difficult just being a 15-year-old in any capacity with puberty and peer pressure, and now I imagine with social media, it's even more daunting to be 15, no matter who or what, you know, you want. So, once again, courageous.
Thank you.
Your parents knew. So you went through basically all of high school identifying as a gay person.
Yes.
So how did you go from, and once again, excuse my being naive
No
about
worries.
this, is you were gay, but now you're trans. So walk us through that transition right there.
Of course. So it made sense to me who I liked.
Okay.
You know, when I got into high school, I was interested in having boyfriends. I grew up in a very, very small town. My school was like 500 people. So there weren't a lot of people to talk to because the community is really small. So I didn't really have any in-person relationships. But it made sense in my mind that I liked guys, and I embraced that. I told some friends. I wasn't out. You know, I was still very masculine at this point, so people still thought I was straight unless they really knew me personally.
You were still playing sports and.
Oh yes, I was playing sports.
And did you enjoy that all along, the athletic events, or did you do that just to fit in?
At that point, it was about fitting in, and you know, there's so much pressure to feel like you need to have friends. And I came from a very athletic community, so I felt like I needed to be good at sports to be liked, especially among my friend group. But the more I got into high school, the less and less I felt like I was fitting in with the guys, and obviously I was figuring all these things out. So, you know, when I came out as gay to my parents, I was afraid I was going to lose my friends in sports, or that I wouldn't be accepted on like the soccer team because I wouldn't be able to change with, you know what I mean?
Sure.
It got very scary for me. I got very, very quiet about it.
Now, when people finally found out, how were people kind, or were the typical teenage boys, were they kind of abusive, or was it mixed?
Well, the funny thing is I didn't tell. There were I only really told friends who were girls who
Okay.
knew. I didn't actually come out officially as gay in high school, and it kind of fell under like the whole transition. So, you know, up until my senior year, which is when I officially came out as transgender, people still thought I was a straight guy.
So you actually came out as transgender while you're still in high school?
Yes. So after my first 2 years of high school, like I said, I knew who I liked. That made sense to me, but I was starting to feel like I wasn't seeing myself in the mirror. The more I went through male puberty, you know, it started getting very scary for me, and I didn't know why. I started having a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety. I couldn't see pictures of myself, you know, self-harm thoughts, like suicidal thoughts. I was just losing my way, you know.
So who did you talk to?
One of my
Everybody needs somebody to talk to, and
Oh, yeah.
everybody needs a support group. Your parents, were they supportive and helpful, or was it something you felt comfortable talking to them? Because I would understand at that age you wouldn't be.
I didn't.
I was afraid
yeah.
to tell my mom I had a girlfriend, you know. One, she probably wouldn't believe it, but two, I was, you know, there's just things you don't feel comfortable talking to your parents about, even though they love you and support you. But So who did you talk to? Who helped you through those deals?
I would talk to my good friend Kate, who was like a really good friend to me in high school. She kind of knew. She started to see some signs that I was starting to try to play feminine. I would like draw myself with long hair, and like at one point we were at this conference, and she was like, "I think you might be trans. Have you ever thought about that?" And I had no exposure to what transgender meant.
So I'm going to show my naive old man syndrome here again. The difference between being gay and being trans is?
The difference is, so there's a difference between gender and sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
Gender is who you are, who you see in the mirror.
Okay.
Sexuality is who you go to bed with.
That's a very good, yeah, okay.
So for me, I knew who I wanted to go to bed with, but I didn't love myself. And I was like, I didn't see myself in the mirror.
Well, see, I think that was the thing that stood out to me the most when you did the podcast with Kirk.
Okay.
Is I could hear, and you just said it right now, you didn't love yourself. And that, to me, is the concerning part. That, why didn't you love yourself? Because your body was rejecting who they were? Your mind thought you should be somebody else? What is it? Because I believe everybody should be happy. You know?
It's like, it's scary.
Take your time. You're doing great.
The further I got into male puberty, my voice was deepening, and it was scaring me because I didn't know why, and it didn't feel like it was. My mind was like, no, it should be higher. Why isn't it? Why is it going deeper? You know, I developed a really bad stutter, and I stopped wanting to talk to people. You know, I was by my middle of my freshman year, I was like, I had a really bad stutter. At the same time, like I was very muscular and bulky before I started transitioning, so I was growing a lot from playing sports, and the bigger like my chest and biceps got, the less I wanted people to see me, so I started wearing sweatshirts and jackets every day to school, like to cover those parts of my body. And like the metaphor that I like to use to describe gender dysphoria, which is that condition, the medical condition, where your mind doesn't match with what your body's doing, is called gender dysphoria. I like saying it's like you're wearing like 8 sweatshirts, but you can't take them off, so you just feel like tight and strangled all the time. It's the muscle. Like my brain was rejecting the muscle, all the muscle growth, and you know, the facial hair, everything. So, yeah.
So, to look at you now, sit there and say, that's a pretty girl.
Thank you.
How did you go from being a muscular jock guy to where you are now?
So what happened was, once Caitlyn Jenner came out in 2015, I started doing a lot of research and realizing that this was also my story. I talked to my parents and let them know what was going on. They were very surprised. They also didn't have a lot of exposure to anything about the trans community, so they were really afraid for my medical well-being, because there's a lot of surgeries. Back a couple years ago, everything was still kind of experimental. My brother I told him before my parents, and he was really concerned about my health if I was going to go through all these surgeries.
And how many surgeries have you had?
So I've had 1 so far.
Okay.
Once my parents got on board, I started getting into counseling, and I went through basically a whole year of being I'm trying to think of the right word, I was talking to a therapist, and they were like, okay, we can see that you have gender dysphoria, you know, you're being persistent, insistent, and consistent about that you need to live as a woman. I was saying that I dream of myself every night being like a woman and beautiful, and that's how I want people to see me, and it kills me that I can't show that to people.
Now, is that part of you just can't walk in and say you want to change your gender? There is a process, and there's counseling, and there's...
Yeah, in most places there still is some kind of part of the protocol is going in and getting letters signed from social workers or licensed therapists saying that you do have gender dysphoria, also from your primary care provider, before you actually go on to getting medical prescriptions for transition hormones.
Okay. So you've had the one surgery.
Yes.
And are you on any medication now or anything that people need to know about?
Yes. So once I had the year of counseling, if you will, we got connected with Trans Youth Equality Foundation,
Which we're going to talk a little bit about.
yes.
Yep.
And they basically, Susan Mosh, who's the founder, basically kind of reinforced in my parents' brains that this is a medical issue. It's like someone with heart failure, sitting in therapy talking about how much it hurts, but not actually doing anything to treat it. So at this point, my mental health was rapidly decreasing. I was sabotaging my body, gaining a ton of weight, thinking about self-harm. So at that,
Now, let's talk about that.
Okay.
Talking about self-harm. In what
Yeah.
way? You contemplated suicide?
yes,
Multiple times.
yes,
And you were that depressed.
yes,
And limited people you could talk to about it, right?
yeah, no,
No one knew. So that was hell. That was hell.
yeah. I didn't see the point in waking up and living as someone who I wasn't anymore.
And you really thought you were at battle with your own body.
Absolutely,
So how do you feel now?
amazing.
Do you really?
Yes,
No regrets?
no regrets.
No regrets.
I don't. One of the things that a misconception about transitioning is that it's a choice. For me, it wasn't. The choice was to live, because I don't think I'd be here if I didn't get the medical help I needed.
Really? So they actually saved your life, you think?
Yeah.
Wow. And how old are you? I know you're never supposed to ask a young lady how old you are.
I'm
but
21.
21. So you went into high school when you were 14 or so?
Yeah.
So it's been
just
about
turned
a
15.
7-year, can I use the word struggle?
Yes. Yeah. So from my freshman year, so 6-7 years. So from my freshman year when I started figuring out my sexuality through when I officially started hormones and everything, which is estrogen. Spironolactone is the testosterone blocker, which stopped my body from growing muscle, stopped it from facial hair, stopped it from producing, all of those male secondary sex characteristics. And then I introduced estrogen, which basically it helps reduce my muscle mass. It does fat redistribution. So previously I carried a lot of weight in my upper body. That shifted down to my hips. I had breast growth. It helped with my hair growing out. It gave me it made my face round and happy. And then.
Now, do you have to take that for life?
Yes.
For the rest of your life? you
Yeah,
have to
my
take
body
it.
doesn't naturally produce estrogen.
Right.
But after I started taking those hormones, a year or two in, I had an orchiectomy, which is castration, so that my body wouldn't be able to produce testosterone anymore. So now I was able to get off the spironolactone, and now it's just the estrogen that I take every day, and that's
Is
all
that
that
a
my
pill?
body
Is
runs
it
on.
an injection?
Yeah,
It's
it's
a pill?
oral pills. Yeah,
And twice a day, 3 times a day? Or?
once a day.
Once a
In
day.
the morning, I just dissolve them on my way to work in my mouth.
So you want to get into fashion in your life, right?
Yes.
Okay. I think that's going to be interesting. I mean, what's your passions?
So around that time when I was really struggling in high school, I started getting really passionate about clothing design. I asked my grandmother, who is a seamstress a long time ago, how to sew, and she got me started hand sewing. She taught me how to use a sewing machine, and she taught me how to use patterns and start to make clothes. And that was so fascinating to me because part of the reason was I didn't feel like I could control what I looked like as a person, but I felt like with fashion and my clothing, I could kind of add layers to help me express myself. So I really, really wanted to make clothes that I couldn't find in stores that would represent me. So.
And there's a need for that.
Absolutely. So unisex clothing, it's not designed in terms of style and size, or size somewhat, but more style. it's not designed to be for men or women specifically. It's meant to cover a broad range of sizes, but also have styles that can kind of be worn by anyone, regardless of your gender expression.
Well, I think that's great. I think
Thank
that's
you.
great.
I'm actually wearing a piece I made today.
It's a beautiful piece. Very nice.
Thank you.
So you go back home to Maine, right? And you run into somebody you went to high school with. Do they recognize you? No. Is that uncomfortable?
Yeah. I was working at a job this summer where there was someone who I played soccer with back when I was in early high school and had no idea who I was. I was a different person.
And you just kind of played along, or?
I played along because
But you know what? That's okay, because like every once in a blue moon, I'll get somebody from high school that'll like send me something on Facebook, and
yeah.
I haven't talked to you in 30 years. There's a reason. So like, don't worry about it. I mean, your high school life will fade away, just like everybody else's.
Absolutely.
Everybody else's. Maybe you're lucky you keep one or two good friends from high school, but so you're on to your new life, and you're happy.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the most
Yeah.
important part.
It absolutely changed my life.
Okay. So everybody who's known you at Northeastern has known you now. And is it fair to say that, and once again, I'm very naive and I'll be the first,
It's okay.
you're a female now.
Yes.
So everybody that you've known at Northeastern has always known you as AJ, a female.
Yes.
Okay.
So by the time I got to Northeastern, I had been medically taking hormones for almost a year. So by that point, the physical changes in my hair growing out had caused so much change that I was unrecognizable from where I was like my junior year. So, and in a sense that like people just saw me as a woman. So I showed up and I introduced
And that's what you
myself
are.
as AJ, yeah.
And that's great.
Thank you.
So Kirk Minahan has pledged $10,000 donation
Yes.
to be matched by Barstool Sports, another $10,000 donation. He's also challenged one of his adversaries, a well-known activist, to a roundtable discussion. I've actually reached out to the Globe as well, the Boston Globe, to increase the awareness for this. So potentially, we could be talking about a sizable donation to your foundation, the foundation that you're with, and I want to make sure I get this right, the Trans Youth Equality Foundation.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that.
So the Trans Youth Equality Foundation was, it kind of became a second family for me when I was really struggling. When I was still living in Maine, when I was just starting to, my parents were on board with everything. We were doing research. I knew like maybe one or two other people who were transgender in my town, and they were both not medically taking hormones or transitioning or changing their names with the school at that point, or, I didn't know anyone who was going through that full process.
Mm-hmm.
So through one of my counselors, I was recommended to them where they have a weekend retreat where you can go and meet all these other kids who are going through the same thing that you are. And I hadn't started transitioning at that point. So when I got there, I was just amazed to see, how amazing these kids' lives were now, because they had gotten the help they needed. They looked amazing. They looked like they should always look. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
How you see yourself inside, like it was on the outside for them,
So a $30,000 donation. How many lives are we talking about here? I mean, if we can save one life, that's important, but $30,000 donation would change multiple lives, right?
Yeah, because one of the things that they do is if kids can't afford to go, they give scholarships, and that could be the difference between a kid making friends and having that support system and getting connected with resources that will help them medically transition, and, counselors, therapy, like everything, like even just the support group within Trans Youth. It's life-changing.
So what do you still do to help the community? Do you go back and counsel, and
I do.
you're available?
I do, yes. So I did 2 camps on my own as a camper. Then I aged out when I turned 19 and I went to college. And I really wanted to give back because my life had changed so much since they helped me. And it was because of them and my parents that I was able to keep living and do as well as I was able to. So this past summer, they asked me to come back as a camp counselor, and I got to go back and meet with all these kids who honestly were terrified. They were looking ahead at these steps that I went through, and they were like, how did you do it? Like, how do I do it? How do I get my parents on board? How do I get the support I need? You know, and I got to make these amazing relationships with them. Really just be that friend, that big sister they need.
I think so. And where's the foundation based out of?
So right now it's based out of Portland. The founder lives in Bangor, so they kind of go back and forth. But they have people everywhere who are always helping.
Because we'll tweet out and we'll tag it to this. But I think this is an important thing, and we have to increase the awareness of this issue, because
Thank you.
the fact that I hear that you were in so much pain, and now I hear that you're happy, that's all that matters.
Thank
that's
you.
all that matters. You've got to be one of the bravest people I've ever met. I think you've got to be commended. I also got to give a shout out to your parents, because I'm sure that the times were tough, but I think you've got some great parents. And
the statistics of having supportive family members drastically improves it reduces suicide rates. It gives you the support system. It gives people that feeling of connection.
Good. So to wrap it up, because we never have enough time here, what more can people do? What more can people learn? And your closing thoughts.
Definitely. Please check out Trans Youth Equality Foundation on their Facebook page, on their website. You can learn more about how you can help. You can make donations on your own. And please just, I hope my story helps people understand that trans kids are really vulnerable and they need people's support in the schools, in the workforce. It's so crucial that we're supported and, that people are there for us.
Well, I got to tell you, like I said, you're one of the bravest people, and it was a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
Anything we can do to help you, I think we've got to keep promoting this. And Kirk's adversary needs to step up a little bit to the table a little bit. And
I'd love to have a conversation with him.
And you've offered to moderate that conversation.
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's make it happen. All right.
Thank you so much.
This is AJ Nichols. Very impressive young lady.
Thank you.
And we'll be back right here on Good Night.